Danite Radio.
Welcome to the Counter Revolution.
So now we're recording?
Yes.
Now that you're done selling me out?
I regret nothing.
Wow. On Father's Day, no less.
Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. In honor of the holiday, we have our father on with us today, the Godfather.
Hey!
You call him Thor. He's the man.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the only one who calls him the Godfather, and for the life of me, I can't get it to take. I can't get other people to start calling him that.
That's because it's stupid.
Nah, it's cool.
Yeah. I'm Rocky.
I'm Jace.
I'm Shadow.
And
That's Thor.
We are the bourgeoisie. That's what we got to add to our intro, dude.
Only two of us here are the bourgeoisie.
Who?
You and Dad.
Why would I be bourgeoisie if you're not?
You're part owner of the company.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, well,
I think bourgeoisie just means upper middle class.
I thought it was the...
And Stalin
the
was
business
what?
owners.
Stalin was or Lenin was a worker. He was a
representative
proletariat.
of the working class. He wasn't an actual proletariat, but
I know.
that was
That's
my
what I'm
understanding.
saying. We're the bourgeoisie. We represent the values of the bourgeoisie.
Oh, maybe. I'm open to that.
We're boring the father.
Well, he's
right.
not super engaged in this. He hasn't
First-
said a word. We introduced him and he
question.
won't say anything.
First
Are you
question,
gonna
Thor.
talk to that
I'm not the
microphone?
bourgeoisie.
First question, Thor. What was it like to raise a kid like Shadow?
It was like training bees.
Get stung once in a while. Even Shadow? I think Shadow was more like training the Pooh Bear that was getting stung by bees.
I'm not sure what that means.
It feels like I should be offended,
He'd just
but it
be
was
like,
funny enough that I'm not.
I love honey, Dumpy.
What?
Christopher Robin. I love you, bro.
Is that all you're going to give us?
It was awesome. I liked raising Shadow. We're exclusive to Shadow.
Mm-hmm. We're not asking about me.
It was
We know
awesome.
it was.
Shadow was a good kid.
We know what it was like to raise.
It was
me.
fun. What was it like to raise you?
It sucked.
No, it didn't.
was
I thought it
brutal.
was all. I loved raising all of my kids. All of them.
That's what I love about Thor, dude. Like seriously, and my kids are listening. At least one of them. He was such a better dad than I am, dude. He just cared so much and like went to everything, you know. And like my kids have like 2 wrestling matches in 2 weeks. I'm like, dude, this is too much, bro. What are we doing? What are we doing?
And to that end, Dad still goes to my soccer games.
Yeah,
He went to 2 last week. 2 soccer games.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Shadow doesn't even play. I watched him on the bench for a lot of years.
Swap bees, getting tied to fences.
that was baseball, bro. I wasn't as much of a ditz at soccer most of the time.
Yeah.
I liked raising kids. It's fun. It was fun, and it still is.
What was the most important lesson you learned as a father?
Wow.
Just to put you on the spot.
Yeah. You couldn't have prepped me for that question.
Nah, bro.
It was the ability to shoot from the hip when you freaking asked me a question that I should be prepped for. That's what
Oh yeah.
What was the question again?
What was the most important lesson you learned as a father? Or an important lesson. It doesn't have to be the most important lesson.
Probably to teach my kids and myself to secure their relationship with Christ. That's Because if you can secure your relationship with Christ, all other decisions and issues can be overcome. Because if you can secure your relationship with the atonement of Christ, everything else doesn't matter.
You can figure everything else out.
Yeah. I hope that that's the most important lesson I learned and am still learning.
And you hope you instilled it in your kids.
I hope they are learning it as well.
We are, dude. Good job.
Yeah, there's a courage factor with our father that the only thing I can think it would come from is from a steady relationship with Christ. He'll always do what's right. And that's not the only time he's courageous. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen this man walk still, like legitimately.
We're getting old.
And it doesn't seem to like go away, dude. It's like one time I might have been 17. It was when I was pretty young. Did like a ZCMI in Ogden or something. It was when they had those old Nextel flip phones, you know, one of those yellow ones. He's up there on that freaking flip phone, just walking back and forth. Seriously, looking up, watching for the load coming in, like, dude, on a teeny beam, like 8 inches, you know. It was a girder, 8-inch girder, just talking on his phone, watching the thing come in. Junior's in the crane, talking on his phone, running the crane. They just not scared of nothing, dude. It is crazy to remember that. He was fearless, and he's also fearless in he'll always do what's right, no matter what.
It's a perfect metaphor for the way that he lives his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like Rocky said, fearless in everything that he does, courageous in the face of adversity, courageous in the face of deception, lying. He'll stand up for what's right no matter what, and he'll stand up for the little guy no matter what. He's always there for people when they need him, and he will courageously stand.
This is embarrassing.
Good.
Good. That's our goal.
Grill me. Walk in the iron. You don't need to look down at the iron if you know where the iron's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about.
It's like your relationship with Christ.
Thanks
You
for sharing,
don't
bro.
need to look around if you know
Which
what
is a
the
great
right thing to
philosophy
do is.
when you're on a curb, you know, like 4 inches off the ground, about 17 to 20 feet in the air.
No way.
Okay.
No way. Well, there you go.
Yeah, so it's hard not to, even if you're the most rebellious child on the planet, it's hard not to grow closer to the Savior when you've got an example like that in your life.
When you've got a rock like that in your life.
For sure.
Don't you have a topic or something you want to talk
you
about?
You are our topic. Happy Father's Day, dude.
Thanks.
You want to?
We got you some family pictures and 15 minutes of fame.
6 people will know you from now.
Or 40 people are going to think you're dope.
Hey, 60 viewers last week. Don't sell us short. And we're about to get a lot more. We're
going
about to be
over the top.
official.
Whoa.
Oh,
When we get
yeah.
on Spotify and Apple
Got us a little
Podcasts.
hosting site.
Yeah. Shout out to
Sweet.
Haley for putting us on the trail of that.
Search us out on Spotify and
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts.
We'll give you the information
What
about the
about,
hosting
like-
site when we're sure that it works. And
Any Podcast Republic or
Got it all
anything that
uploaded.
get us on there?
I think, yeah, they can get us on all of them. So
Cool.
we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Sweet.
Look for
I
us
always
to
wanted
look
to be
for
famous.
Yeah,
You're going to be world famous in Eastern Pleasant Grove.
for sure.
Already am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I got a dog named Johnny.
So, I decided when thinking about the topic that we're going to have, I might try and play a little devil's advocate, see how riled up we can get, old Shadow.
Oh, dude. I don't know why you got to do that to me.
So, Shadow,
Let's introduce the topic.
let's talk about something else first.
Okay.
There's a college, a local university, that's named after a fella that I just, I'm having a hard time coming to grips with that the church would use that guy as a namesake on a college,
Okay.
He, there was a prophet who founded our church and even ordained black people to the priesthood. But then the second prophet kind of did away with that, and that's who we named the college after. Do you feel comfortable having the flagship of our church being named after Brigham Young, the
What college is that?
Brigham Young University?
Steven Seneger. Yeah.
Steven Seneger, yeah. That racist.
Yes, I absolutely feel comfortable with that.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I have no qualms.
So even though he thought black people were less than the white man, you're comfortable with?
Yep. Yeah. No
Sure.
qualms.
Hey, we don't agree with that. He didn't think that. Don't put that out there. That's not true.
It's not true. I am playing devil's advocate, trying to get Shadow riled up. He's not taking the bait, though.
Not right now.
Because he doesn't want the podcast to be very entertaining, apparently.
Let's talk about old Brother Brigham. Let's talk about the Lion of the Lord, huh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Um,
One of my favorite prophets, for sure.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read the last installment of Saints, you need to, because he will then become even more your favorite prophet. And Thor's right. We don't believe that he thought that blacks were less.
He has some alarming teachings, and there's some pretty good evidence that he was racist.
Sure.
There's some pretty good evidence that he was racist.
Any more so than anyone else in the day, though?
There were abolitionists at the time, but outside of that, probably not.
I think
He was
that,
probably more inclusive than most of the country at the time.
Pretty racist streak among most abolitionists, too, though.
Surely.
They didn't think that they should be slaves, but they also didn't think that we should mingle with them by any means.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. So, to give a little background, there's a petition going around to change the name of Brigham Young University to something that is less glorifying of a racist man.
Mm-hmm.
And I am vehemently opposed to it. Here's a couple reasons why. One, Brigham Young was a great man, and his contributions to the founding of the West are unparalleled in American history. There is no other man who contributed as much to the settlement and founding of the Western United States than Brigham Young. Name one. Devil's advocate.
Davy Crockett.
What did he do?
Lewis and Clark.
Try that.
Lewis and Clark just found the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
They didn't contribute that much to the founding and settlement of,
Sure.
They discovered, were great explorers, don't get me wrong. But if we're talking about racist folks, they had their issues with the Indians. They had their issues with the Native Americans, did they not?
Sure, I'm having a hard time playing devil's advocate. I struggle with it.
I know, because you're on the same page.
But
I should always be the devil's advocate. I'm way better at it.
Sure, because I take the bait because I want it to be entertaining. Yeah, I agree. I think it wasn't an accident that Joseph Smith was killed and Brigham Young installed in his place too, for the Saints to settle the West. I think that Joseph Smith had a set of talents and a certain amount of courage that enabled him to found a church. I would imagine he was pretty persuasive. And
I would imagine that much like our dear father, he stood for what was right no matter what.
Sure. Well, yeah. And that was a trait he learned over time, just like our dad probably did. But I would imagine that courage was inspired courage in Brigham Young as well, to always stand and do what's right. But then I think that there's a gregariousness to Brigham Young and maybe even a bit of narcissism that allowed him to, like you said, found the West. I mean, the West wouldn't be what it is.
If you just want to talk numbers, he was the reason over 350 towns were settled.
Yeah.
That's an unbelievable number of and the organizational requirements behind that settling, the amount of
Yep.
work he had to put into and the amount of time he was spending on that's outside of, he was pretty much solely responsible for the founding of not just Brigham Young University, but the University of Utah was founded because of Brigham Young. He was the first one to organize a board of regents. So there's a pretty good chance if you were educated in Utah, 2/3 of the educated people in the state of Utah were educated because of Brigham Young for 140 years. And then since they've branched out and there are more options for education than just those two in Utah State, but 2/3 of the state of Utah was educated because of Brigham Young. And that's just his contributions to education alone. He contributed in every aspect of life. And it was said of him, if he hadn't been a prophet, an organizer of the Mormon settling of the West, he would be a titan of industry, a Rockefeller, an Andrew Carnegie. He would be that level because of how talented and how great his organizational mind was.
And just the work ethic alone. Anything to
I think that we're leaving out the fact that he was a prophet of God.
add? Sure.
Well,
So
right now we're focusing entirely on who he was as a man, and you've moved into an even more important topic.
yeah,
Absolutely.
you can't leave that out because a lot of that organizational skill or whatever you want to call it could be, in fact, inspiration from our Father in heaven. And his plan is the greater plan. And when you give Brigham Young accolades for settling 350 towns, Heavenly Father had a plan.
Sure.
And that's
Surely.
why he was in the position that he was in.
Surely. He was an imperfect tool being used by a perfect Father in heaven.
Just like all of us.
Yeah, agreed. And when we look back at Brigham Young as a man, and we threaten to change the name and deny who he was as a man and focus only on the negative parts, you have to ask yourself the question: how are you going to be seen in 40 years, in 100 years, in 150 years? How are the beliefs that you hold dear going to be seen when the world changes further? It's not like this is a new phenomenon.
Yeah, we as a people focus on faults to deride ourselves. It's almost it's definitely a natural man thing to want to be better. And because we're natural men, and we not only do we receive inspiration from our Father in heaven, but we also receive inspiration from his arch enemy, we deride people, we bring people down, we attack people, and that's what's going on with Brigham Young, attacking a great man in order to build ourselves up. And I'm not, but that's what's going on.
That's what's happening. Sure.
Yep. I mean, this goes for all great men in history. They all have their detractors. If Satan through leftism can delegitimize Brigham Young, he delegitimizes the church further in his
plan.
And it doesn't work for
It's
Latter-day Saints with faith, but
it's the exact same as the attack on Joseph Smith. That
Sure.
That's 2 years old, maybe.
Well,
That Joseph Smith, all this information came out about all of Joseph Smith's wives and all this. That's 2 years old, or 4 years old, and now we've moved on to the next to Brigham Young. Oh, and that's not to say Joseph Smith doesn't have detractors before and after that. That was one specific issue that came to light fairly recently. But
did you have something?
No, I just think as a people, the big picture, that's what frequently occurs. And not only that, do we try to bring down, I hate to say we, but collectively as a people, as a natural people, that's what we do. And then we deify and we build up wicked men. Who thinks Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid are awesome?
Yeah.
And they're freaking
Guilty.
yeah, they're train robbers and killers. Sundance Kid was a killer under Butch Cassidy's direction, and they robbed banks. And it was they claimed to be Robin Hood. Sure, they were popular amongst their group of people because they brought home loads of money and instilled it into the local economy. But it was all stolen, freaking wicked money, and everybody does it all across the board. There are tons of examples like that. Wyatt Earp, he was a gambler and I don't know all of the bad, but certainly not a great, upstanding citizen. Even though he was a lawman, took advantage of his position as a lawman to enhance his gambling tendencies and his gambling business. And we build him up like, how many Wyatt Earp movies are there? And he probably was personable as heck. You've heard that. The same as the Sundance Kid, personable as heck. Everybody loved the guy except for the guy that was on the other end of the barrel of his gun.
Sure.
We do that a lot, and that's just Wild West. We do it in today's society as well. I'm not going to use examples, but look at people in our society that we build up as awesome, incredible saviors, and they are immoral, or especially in music, they're just deviants, sexual deviants, and we build them up like they're superstars. That's the plan of Lucifer. Make good look good, look bad, and bad look good.
Yep.
Sure.
Which again lends itself to the Gulag Archipelago, putting the criminals above that's just the way.
Above the 59s.
It's more proof that, look, if you're fighting for communism, you're on the wrong side. If your side is pro-criminal, the second your civil rights movement starts putting criminals above ordinary citizens, the second it's been hijacked and become a thing of wickedness. And they do the same thing that there's great institutions in this world, and the way to tear them down is to attack the people who founded them. So,
surely,
Joseph Smith and Brigham Young in the beginning of the church, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson
fathers
in the beginning of the country. That's just how that's how the left rolls, under the direction of a great and conspirator.
Yeah,
indeed. Let's take this a step further with Brigham Young. I don't know. This has been eating at me all week. Ever since I heard it, just eating at me. I love Brigham Young. He is one of my favorite prophets for sure. He's way up there. He's awesome next to the current prophet, obviously, because a living prophet is always more valuable than a dead prophet. But he's magnificent. He's a phenomenal leader. His talents were on full display under the tutelage of the good Lord, and he was flawed deeply, well, as are we all, and he didn't let that hold him back from doing the will of the Lord as best he knew how. But I've been talking with people about this and discussing it, and somebody raised a point that bothered me a great deal, and I want to bring it up. They said, well, if you are so worried about erasing history by pulling down statues of Brigham Young or changing the name, then why did we do things like pull down statues of Stalin with the fall of the Soviet Union? When the Soviet Union fell, they went in and pulled down statues, and they changed names of cities. Stalingrad, I believe, was changed, as was Leningrad. Both names were changed. with the fall of the Soviet Union.
Changed back though.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, they were changed back.
So,
but the argument is, aren't we also deleting history there? No, we are absolutely not. Those were wicked men. They were dictators, and in the overthrowing of a dictatorship, you eliminate the dictator. You have to. If his statues remained, he would have remained on the minds of the people as their oppressor. Brigham Young was not an oppressor of the American West. He was a little bit racist. He was not an oppressor of the American West. He was a gifted and inspired prophet who developed the West and contributed more to the development of the American West than any other man.
I think that they would argue that Brigham Young was just as wicked as Stalin. They'd be idiots to do it, but that's what they would say. Or more wicked than Stalin, depending on how far into the rabbit hole they're, or how much of the Kool-Aid they're drinking.
Then I follow that question up with this: how? In what way was he more wicked?
Bigamy and racism. That's just what they'd say.
I know. I understand. I'm using you as a devil's advocate here.
So
in what way was Stalin not a bigot and a racist?
So there would be an argument somewhere along the lines of it would start with women were happier under Soviet rule because they were sexually liberated. They were treated as equals to men, which wasn't true, but that was the rhetoric of the time. They would also say something like the Gulag Archipelago was a CIA smear campaign on the Soviet Union in order to... So all those deaths didn't really happen. There are eyewitness accounts of the Soviet Union that say it wasn't that bad. They'd say stuff like that.
So they'd get into conspiracy theory and conjecture?
Well, they'd have a crazy person's book to back it up, but they'd have evidence. But you can't read the Gulag Archipelago and not know that it's... I mean, there's no way that it's made up. But there's a... what else was I going to say? What were we talking about before that? What were you saying? About the... What was you just saying, Jace? You zoning out on us, bro?
Oh,
We that boring?
I thought you were up to it. I don't know what you're missing here.
We were talking about pulling down Stalin statues.
Oh, yeah. My friend sent me a post. There's a Stalin statue in Seattle of on private property.
Interesting.
There were some conservatives that went and defaced it. And this lady was upset. First of all, she's like, that statue's on private property. The communist leader of the world is on a private property. First of all, hilarious right there. But she's all, the communist follower of Stalin is worried about private property. All of a sudden, like, okay. She's all butthurt about it, And my first thought of when I saw that statue was like, damn, I want that thing, So like this whole we got to tear down these statues to these offensive. I'm like, why? I'd take that statue of Stalin any day. It doesn't mean anything. I'd put it in my freaking front yard. It doesn't mean anything. In fact, I've considered on Labor Day flying a freaking Soviet flag in my front yard. It doesn't mean I believe in communism. Quite the contrary. It's making a statement of, look, labor unions are the same no matter where you go. They have a monopoly on labor, and they will push your country into, at worst, communist revolution, and at best, a police state, So I just...
And we have spent plenty of time on the labor unions, for sure.
And actually, it was a Lenin statue. I think it wasn't a Stalin statue, but I can't remember who it was now. But either way.
It was Gorbachev.
No, it was Lenin.
Marx.
It was Lenin. But it's like... And my buddy, thank you for sending that to me there, Kevin. He listens every week, so he's the man. But seriously, that's the one I think.
Lenin and
Yeah,
Seattle.
Lenin. And so I was like, why do you have to tear these statues down? First of all, maybe it's just because Lenin seems like he was a stylish guy. It's kind of a
He looks good.
You better
an
show
aesthetically
it to the, better show it to
pleasing.
the Godfather.
It's kind of an aesthetically pleasing statue.
He looks like a dapper individual.
Yeah, but honestly, they're all like that. They don't paint them in all their grime. They don't. But it's
He's
like,
not standing on the heads of of ethnic cleansings.
people, yeah, dead Ukrainians, but.
He's not watching
Yeah.
a member of the secret police beat somebody to death.
But I don't know. It's an inanimate object. It represents the history of the place,
Sure.
And it represents, as bad as I hate Lenin, I love the history of his country and I'm fascinated by the Soviet takeover of the Bolshevik revolution, and it's just,
Which is why it comes up so much
Yeah.
on this podcast.
and even into, I love World War I and World War II, and
there are things to learn from both
Yeah.
sides.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's just a statue, and it's not like they've got candles lit underneath it and they're worshiping it, which this chick was obviously because it was on private property. But yeah, I didn't even think about that until Kevin pointed it out. He's like, "She's worried about private property." That's a good point, but.
It's not private. It's everyone.
Yeah, there are tons of statues of people that I can't stand, Lenin being one of them, it doesn't, but the statue I think is cool. I would take that statue, put it in my front yard, and if nothing else, it would inspire conversation, like, you have a Lenin statue in your front yard?
Oh, that's who it is.
They would not know.
Yeah, come on over. Let's talk about it.
97% of the people would not know who
I
it
know.
was.
That's why I put the Hitler
Let's
statue.
be honest, dude. I'm with you. I've delved way into the communist revolution. I could not pick Lenin out of a lineup of 20 guys. I couldn't pick him out. I have no idea what he looks like.
I could, but
He looks like that statue.
I just...
Remember that picture I just showed you?
That's why the Hitler statue would be in the backyard, because everyone would recognize it,
Yeah, sure.
No, I mean, there are... I don't understand the whole... We got to get rid of these statues, Like, it's part of the history of the place. I mean, we got to take history for everything it is. We can't whitewash it. Do you know who whitewashed history? That guy right there.
Vladimir Lenin?
Yeah, painted it to be however he wanted it to be, And there was a saying among prisoners in Gulag. They'd say, "Oh no, the future's set in stone. It's history that's flexible," because they'd always change the history and then tell you exactly what was going to happen in the future. And then when that didn't happen, they'd tell you it happened anyways because history's flexible. It's a very convenient way to rule a people. So I think we're crazy to tear down any statues. I think we're crazy to change the name of any college, no matter how wicked the man was. But Brigham Young was not a wicked man. He was a great man who, like Noah, I would argue, was perfect in his day. That's all you need to know right there in the Bible. It says Noah was a man perfect in his day. You have to judge people in their day. You can't judge them. The church was thrown out of Missouri or out of Illinois because they were bringing black people to and putting them in positions of power in the church to a slave state. Illinois was still a slave state when they got kicked out of Nauvoo.
And they controlled a vast majority of the voting population.
Yeah. So yes, it was bad that they stopped giving blacks the priesthood and that they started treating them like second class citizens. But they were punished for doing it the other way, for going against the grain, which still isn't an excuse, but that's the way that's what it is. And you look back at the Mountain Meadows Massacre. Yeah, It was bad. It was horrible. They killed men, women, and children. Not all the children. They put the ones that wouldn't remember
Anyone under
foster
7.
care. They killed everyone else, which is a horrific crime. But they had just been ran out of Illinois. Their women raped, their men tarred and feathered and killed, their prophet murdered by non-Mormons. And now all of a sudden here comes non-Mormons into their new home. It's an understandable reaction. It's wicked, but understandable. If you can't put yourself in that position to where you understand the mindset of these people, you'll never make the right decision.
Sure. You have to judge them by the
Jordan Peterson says all the time,
generation they grew up in.
90% of Germans were complicit with the Nazi regime, meaning they were selling out Jews. They were turning a blind eye at minimum and selling out their neighbors at worst. 90% of the population. And he says, do this thought experiment. Can you put yourself as a guard in a Nazi camp? Because guess what? Anyone can be that guy. Anyone can be that guy. If you are taking paths down that road, all it takes is betraying yourself one time and you set yourself down a path. If you don't repent, which is super convenient that all these tyrannical dictatorships don't have an opportunity for repentance. You can't ever get out of your corruption. You can't ever get out of your corruption, so you just keep going further and further down. So you start by telling one lie. Next thing you know, you're freaking locking the gas chamber door behind, because there's no repentance and you allowed your corruption to take you that far. It's not, Nazism isn't a German problem, it's a human problem. That sick, demented thing where, everyone says, where were the cops at? Why did the cops just follow orders? They were all just following orders. It wasn't just the cops, the citizens were doing it too. Look, this is the way it goes. This is how. So yeah, you can say, and I've talked about it last time, all those posts about what you would be doing if you ever wondered what you would be doing during Nazi Germany or slavery. This is it. Okay, you're right. If you're going against what you believe, what you know to be true, to look good for your compatriots, that's what you'd have been doing during the Nazi regime or the Soviet regime or during slavery. You think abolitionists were popular among anyone? No, they were going against the grain of everything. People in the North didn't like them. People in the South didn't like them. Everyone just wants the status quo. When you start going against that status quo, that's when you're the outsider.
Sure.
And if you can't question Black Lives Matter, you're sticking to the status quo.
Sure. Surely.
If you can't, and that's another thing that's been driving me crazy. If you can't not be the white liberal that spouts his love for the African American that Malcolm X talks about, you're maintaining the status quo. If you can't allow black people to solve their own problems, if you don't think they're capable of doing it without you posting something stupid on Facebook, you're more racist than I am, I assure you.
Preach, brother. Preach. You got anything to add to that?
No.
So
I agree. I'm concerned. Why do we concede that Brigham Young was a racist?
He has some talks about black people being less than white people.
Okay. I had never seen those.
He says that things like the reason they weren't given the priesthood is because they're the seed of Cain and God is punishing them for that. And there's no actual doctrinal evidence for that.
Okay.
And so it could have been the belief of the time. It could have been actual racism. But I can concede that maybe he was a little bit racist because sometimes great men are racist.
Maybe he wasn't.
And maybe he wasn't. I'm open to that too. It's a point that I'm comfortable conceding.
Okay.
I have no qualms conceding it because we're all flawed. We all have. Even
it would be interesting to see an interaction because there, like you said, there were black people even after he made the edict or whatever you call it of blacks not being able to have the priesthood or receive a temple endowment. There were still black people that joined the church with Brigham Young as a prophet. Why? You have to ask yourself why.
Surely.
And did he have interaction with them? I don't know that. Obviously, I don't know. Just like Black Lives Matter, if you don't say Black Lives Matter, words aren't racist. Words can't be racist, I don't think. I think actions can be racist.
Sure.
Because if I say all lives matter, that makes me a racist. And I'm just simply not. My actions prove otherwise. I've worked with, and I know that gets shot down. My best friend was black, blah, blah, blah. But I've worked with black people, and I'm not racist. But I believe all lives matter. So I don't accept that words make you racist.
Surely.
Because that's what we pick and choose to create racism, when in reality it's actions that make you racist. And words, we get hung up on words and we utilize words incorrectly, in my opinion.
And if you look at the thoughts and feelings of the time, the issue, while it is about race and it is about blacks and whites, the issue itself is not black and white. As much as we want to think of it as good guys versus bad guys, that's not the way the world works. The world is imperfect people against imperfect people. And perhaps against is the wrong word. It's just we're all imperfect. And it makes issues incredibly more complex than simply good versus evil and black versus white. As much as we want that to be the case. And we can call out wickedness when we see it. That is factual. But we're working with imperfect people. The issues become way more nuanced and way more complex.
Do you want the devil's advocate argument against that?
Please.
Words aren't racist unless they're a call to action. And a talk given by a prophet is always a call to action.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I can accept that. However, what were his actions? What were his actual actions towards the black people?
You're right.
Right?
The banning of black people from receiving the priesthood was done.
However,
under his presidency.
There's still
under the Lord's plan, blacks were brought to this country without their permission, and look at the blessings that they have because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how dare you, sir?
I know.
How dare you, sir?
I know that's a horrible thing to say.
The African American hero Muhammad Ali.
Right.
Wow. There's an imperfect man. If you look no further.
But he went to Zaire and went, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad." I don't know his exact quote, but his sentiment was, "I'm glad
that granddaddy was brought over here as a slave." Yeah,
yeah, because he had
because he was given more opportunity than anybody else on the face, of the earth.
Right.
He was a poster child for the Nation of Islam and the civil rights movement. He was given so many opportunities because his granddaddy was brought over as a slave.
So the direct quote is, "Thank God my granddaddy got on that boat."
Oh, there we go.
My bad. Sorry, I misquoted it.
I think that's awesome, and it's kind of a reality. So what was Brigham Young's actions, even in banning the priesthood, and what was the purpose there? We don't fully understand. There's a lot of things we don't understand.
Sure.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. There's still 50% of the population who can't hold the priesthood. And it's not out of worthiness, and God's made it clear that it's not because they're lesser beings to us. In fact, I've only ever really heard it the other way.
Right.
They're to be protected. They have a very important work on the earth, far more important than our work, and
The way I've heard it, it almost sounds like the priesthood is a pittance.
A burden. Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
here's something for you to do, bro.
Yeah. So it's, who knows what it was and how it came about, but
Surely.
it's,
Sure. I'm just not ready to concede that he's a racist.
Sure. And
Just
that's
like Thomas Jefferson has black lineage. I'm not ready to concede that, even with the DNA evidence. His brother was a freaking scoundrel. The theory, one of the theories is that his brother had sex with his slave and created the children, and that would explain the DNA evidence. They're men of God. The founding fathers are men of God. The prophets are men of God, and I'm tired of seeing them painted as wicked. It's just like myself. If I make a bad choice, that's not who I am.
sure.
And so when we concede that their wickedness, that's not who they are. That's not what they consist of. I make a bad choice, that's not who I am.
Sure.
We need to hang on to that reality. Brigham Young was a great man.
And I guess for me, it just doesn't bother me. To call him racist, to concede that doesn't bother me. And so I understand where you're coming from. And that's why I used it the way that I did. And,
Sure.
and concede that point. Because it bothers me very little. Because the issue is way more complex than racist and not racist.
Let's think about it this way also. Brigham Young had all power out here.
Yeah.
He left the United States of America with a bunch of people who not worshipped him, but
Would follow him to the ends of the earth.
acted like he was the mouthpiece for God.
Weird that they
Yeah.
acted that way.
And
He had the opportunity to raise an army and create
his own country.
create his own country,
But our
and
church-
dominate.
Our church made it pretty clear that the country we were in is the country we're supposed to be in. And what did Lenin do with the exact same power?
Yeah.
What did Stalin do with the exact same power? These leftist heroes. What did Mao do with the exact same power? Murdered
Che.
millions of people. Che, tens of thousands
That's
of
who you need to pick.
Yeah.
The guys that are on these
T-shirts,
T-shirts
yeah.
right now.
people. Oh, Mao's on T-shirts.
Is he?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Classy.
But if that's not proof right there, because he had just as much power as Lenin, easy, more so, because the people loved him. All the people loved him.
And he wasn't killing them.
He had his detractors. He
didn't send any of them to a gulag.
Yeah, he had his detractors, but by far the majority followed him here because it's almost like God told him to tell them.
Well, and
Almost exactly like that.
And all his
And-
detractors stayed behind in the continental United States at the time. He left and went to Mexico exclusively with people who would follow him. That was it. Those were the only kinds of people that...
Yep.
There weren't people coming out here who were like, I don't know about this guy. No, they were like, oh, he's a prophet of God. We're following him, and we're going to do what we're asked. And that's part of what makes him... it's easy to give Brigham Young the credit. No, that's part of what made him a great leader. He was a prophet of God, and the people will follow a prophet of God. And the people were obedient, and they did great things under his direction because he received direction from the Lord, and they moved into action. It was a call to action, and they moved into action. And they settled towns that were hundreds of miles from their families. They made sacrifices and did what needed to be done because they loved their leader.
Yep. So all you whiny BYU students, look at how hard it was in Brigham Young's time. All those people that you think he oppressed would look at you like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You go home and there's a cold box in your house with tons of food in it that you don't even have to grow yourself or kill yourself? What are you doing?
You turn that knob and the heat comes on in the winter.
Yeah.
You don't have to chop wood.
And in the winter, we were shaving logs to build log cabins.
Yeah.
We were, every 10th day, we were quarrying out granite blocks
Yeah.
and railroading them into the city.
Yeah. Where's your gratitude for the time in which you live and for the college in which Brigham Young is responsible for you to be able to go to? The whole system set up by Brigham Young and the church at the time. Well, I guess not entirely, but
To serve you.
the church was founded by the college was founded by Brigham Young. The college that you get to attend for the private university you get to attend for way cheaper than any private university, made possible by the man that you want to take off the side of the mountain.
I think they should put him on I think they should put him on money.
For sure.
Him on United States
For
currency.
sure.
Him, Malcolm X, and Frederick Douglass. They should all be on money.
And George Washington Carver, because I love peanut butter. Did you hear what I asked for Father's Day?
No, peanut butter.
No, I was
No,
like,
even better.
I want you to save your money and lower your expectations of me as a father. And that girl right there was like,
What?
are you retarded, dude?
Best gift ever.
My expectations couldn't get lower.
Oh shoot! Nicely done. Actually, there's one more guy that I'd like to talk about real quick because I've seen a lot of misinformation on him. Abraham Smoot. He's another one. There's a building named after him at BYU. He's on the Knicks list with Brigham Young.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being he was a slaveholder. He was one of the first mayors of Provo, and he was a slaveholder. He was a slaveholder. That is true. And he gets a lot of flack for being, he was pro-slavery, and that's not the case at all. It had to do with the politics of the time. Utah was originally petitioning to come into the Union as a slave state. It was a really complex issue, but on his missions that he served, he would request to distribute literature from Joseph Smith's presidential campaign, which was anti-slavery, and he would get shut down because he served a number of missions in the southern states. And always they'd be like, "Oh no, we're not publishing that down here." He's like, "Okay, I'll be obedient to the laws of this state," and he wouldn't publish them. And he gets a lot of flack for not supporting President Joseph Smith's presidential campaign, or the prophet Joseph Smith's presidential campaign. And that's not the case. He was supporting it as best he could in a state that was very much opposed to President Joseph Smith's literature. But Abraham
in
Smoot...
states, the southern states, you mean? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was a wealthy man who was a part of the funding for BYU. He was a big reason that they got the funding to become a private institution, Brigham Young Academy at the time. He was a part of the reason they broke away from the University of Deseret and became Brigham Young Academy. The University of Deseret is what later became the University of Utah. And it was his funding that did that. He is another major reason that Brigham Young University exists and that you get to attend college that is,
Super cheap,
tithing
and
subsidized.
super good.
And he was there's a statue of him at the public library because he funded the public library. When under the direction of Brigham Young, who was governor and prophet, he was a bishop and mayor of Provo. And under the direction of Brigham Young, he funded the library and he funded Brigham Young Academy and was a huge contributor from a monetary perspective to those institutions. So naturally, there's a statue of him there because he contributed the money for those establishments. It stands to reason. It is unbelievable to me the lack of logic here. It stands to reason that a person who contributed the money and a person who contributed the time and the energy to creating an educational institution would be hailed as a hero by those same institutions. That's why we named it after Brigham Young. He started it. It is such a simple step of logic to say, oh, that makes perfect sense. He started the university. We named it after him. That's all there is to it. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's so simple. It's
My only struggle with the Smoot statue is it's got him standing on the backs of a bunch of muggles being crushed, which I find very offensive as a non-magical being myself.
Freaking guy. Freaking guy.
Wow.
Freaking nerd.
Good night, Thor.
Where'd that go?
And he freed his slaves. Before the Civil War even happened, he freed his slaves. So,
Yep.
what do you do about it?
Yep. I'm with you, bro. I think we've...
It's the demonization of good people. Happens all the time.
Demonization of good
people. And even good, righteous people do it. They fall for it. They fall for fall for the trickery of demonizing good people.
Yep.
And anglicizing, is that the right word? Wicked people. Wicked choices.
All that being said, I do want to add, after that 55-minute tirade, I would knock over 1,000 Brigham Young statues, and I would knock over 1,000 Abraham Smoot statues before I was pleased about this next fact. They're changing the name of Aunt Jemima and the image on the syrup bottle, and that gets me worked up. I am not pleased about that.
Uncle Henry, isn't that another brand they're changing?
Uncle Ben, I think.
Uncle Ben, yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Ben,
Ben's
and I think they're changing Mrs. Butterworth too. I'm not about it. You're eliminating a black woman from history. The original Aunt Jemima was a slave. That's true. But in the subsequent years, they had a woman who they hired named Aunt Jemima, and they sent her around the country, and she made pancakes for everyone with Aunt Jemima's pancake mix. They're eliminating her from history by changing the branding. The longest standing trademark in the United States. That is the longest standing branding trademark in the United States, and they're changing it because it's suddenly racist.
Oh, wow.
And her surviving family members are like, no! What? Yo, if you have issues, give us money!
Yeah!
If it's racist, just give us money! What are you doing?
We'll take the reparations.
They're like, no! Freaking pay it forward and give us a cut of it.
Sure.
And continue using her image. We're all about it. We love seeing our Aunt Jemima on the syrup. We're all about it. So,
But how can you establish a communist utopia if you don't control what history says? When they start changing history, folks, look out. You're on the wrong side of history. As you so love to point at us. The wrong side of history. Okay. When they start changing history, you're on the wrong side of history. So what, Aunt Jemima wasn't a slave now because she's not on the syrup? We fixed it? Problem solved?
No longer exists.
Racism over?
We're good.
Yeah, it's a joke. Fortunately, Malcolm X is still rogue enough that side will listen to him. They don't like you, white liberals. Stay the hell out of their business. They're capable. They're perfectly capable of solving any problem they have. Stay the hell out of it. 100%. They're just as capable as you or me. Probably more capable because, frankly, you're poster retarded. All right.
they're all about it. I'd consider that issue
Pushed. Okay, folks.
Thanks for having me. It was darn swell.
Happy Father's Day, Pop. Thanks
Thanks.
for being a dope example.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is a good podcast. I only wish that Jason talked more.
Yeah, I had a lot to say today. Huh?
Oh, you're still here?
I took
Yeah,
his
hey.
mic. Sorry, Jace, for taking your mic.
Alrighty, Dad. Thanks for being our dad. We love you.
You're a
Thank
great
you.
man. You're a great man. Thanks for. I can't help but think our opinionatedness comes from you. Ooh. I was thinking about this the other day. How do you raise kids to be critical thinkers? You make fun of their teachers every time your kid comes home with a stupid idea that their teacher gave them. Because that's what my dad did. Well, you listen to your teacher, are you? Okay.
Teachers don't know anything.
Well, just think it through.
The teacher can teach you to learn to read and write, and that's it. Don't take
Do
any of their
arithmetic.
stupid ideas. Like how much they should get paid, right, Carter?
Boom.
Teachers deserve more pay because they work half the year for 7 hours a day and babysit kids.
Most babysitters don't get paid.
Pretty soon
Not
they'll be
mine.
heroes.
Yeah.
If we're not careful, we're going to make them heroes.
I'm sure they already are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, there's only one hero at this table.
Yes.
Jace.
Thank you. All of you acknowledge me.
All my kids are wise kids.
Good.
They know they're thinking.
Critical thinkers. Good.
Boy, look at those shoulders on that kid. I'd have killed for those when I was 15, yeah?
All right, it's
Dang,
time to
bro.
close out.
It got awkward.
All righty. God bless y'all. Have a great week.